Hey, good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Lahari from Penang International Dental College, and welcome to today's webinar series streamed live on our Facebook page. Today's topic is, if I video, will they watch? Designing and innovating video to support learners. To talk on this topic, it's my pleasure to invite Professor Michael BOTELHO from the University of Hong Kong. Good morning, Professor. Chairing this session is Dean of PIDC, Dr. Ajay Telang, and moderating the Q&A is Dr. Fawaz Siddiqui, Head of Pediatric Dentistry. So now I invite Dr. Ajay to introduce Professor BOTELHO.
Thank you, Dr. Larry. Morning, everyone. It's my pleasure to introduce Professor Michael BOTELHO, who we have now known for quite some time. Prof. BOTELHO has been with Hong Kong University for the last 25 years and has been actively engaged in educational reform, pedagogy, and innovation. In education, he has over 20 peer-reviewed publications, many chapters, and has participated in many education grants. He has lectured and consulted in education across Hong Kong, Southeast Asia, Europe, and North America. His educational interests are related to video, online learning, problem-based learning, active learning, flipped classroom, and student discourse. He has a number of teaching awards, including the prestigious Hong Kong UGC Teaching Award and the University of Hong Kong Distinguished Teachers Award. He is long-term committed educator and a scholar of teaching and learning, and enthusiastic to create improved and novel learning experiences for students across the globe. Allow me to welcome Prof. BOTELHO. Prof, the stage is yours.
Lovely. Thank you so much indeed for the invitation and also the kind introduction. And it's great to meet up with you guys again. We've had a long friendship and relationship over the number of the years. I seem to remember you came over for some PBL training. I've been over to do some PBL training at your school. And I love coming over to PIDC in Penang. It's a lovely part of the world. Okay, so let me start with my sharing my screen for the presentation. Now, I've called this rather, I don't know if you're familiar, but this actually comes from a movie. It happens to be, I think it was a Kevin Costner movie, and it was called I think the title was, or the phrase in it was, if you build it, will they come? And basically what he did in his movie was he had this idea of building a baseball field in the middle of nowhere, in the middle of a cornfield. And he thought, if you built it with love, would people come? And eventually people did come. That was the last scene. So I'm sorry that I should have given you the spoiler alert. But it worked for him. And so I think as educators, we have to think, particularly at this poignant time and moment where I would say scrambling. I think that's a fair term, in coming to grips with the new era that we're in and how we create online learning is if we're going to video, will students watch? And I think within that context, we've got to think about how we design and innovate video to support learners. Because what our probably greatest error is that we do is we think, well, I lecture, that's my modus operandi. That's the way I was taught. That's the way that I practice. I like being the sage on the stage. I've got important stuff to say. If students just listen, then they'll learn it. And so therefore we create videos in the same formula, and that's quite wrong. So I'm not a fan of recording lectures, but they have their place and they can be useful. I'm more interested in rather different and innovative videos that hopefully you'll learn about through the rest of this presentation. So I've got three main themes that I'd like to focus on today. One happens to be about the benefits of video, the typology and affordance of video, and what these different things are. If you're going to be creating a video, you've got to think about task design. And we tend not to do that. We just record and put it out there. And I think we should have more of a formulaic rubric in the way that we are creating our content and thinking about it. I've done some research on this. Invariably, most of the research, when they're investigating videos, they're very bad in checking the alignment between the content in the video, the learning objectives for the course, and the assessment that they're undertaking. People aren't thinking about those things. So in the same way that John Biggs talks about alignment of teaching, assessment, and feedback, we should be doing the same thing with our learning in videos. So therefore, I'm going to be talking about forwards and reverse engineering of videos with regards to task design. And I'll also touch on how long should a video be, because there's some evidence out there and I kind of disagree with it. I'm also going to give you an insight into some innovative videos that I've created over recent years. Initially, I called it the CCV, or Communal Consultation video. And now I've analyzed it and looked at what's happening. I've renamed it, and now it's actually the observation of video expert-student dialogue. Now, the last one in blue is, I won't really talk about this, but I've created a resource and a file that I've given that the hosts will be able to share. And where you see that little gray icon, you will be able to find that in the resource as something you may wish to look at afterwards. It's quite simple, but you may find it useful. And it's also some of the references that I'm talking about now. And so therefore, that's the outline of the content in there with some of the URLs such that you can find some of these references. So if you think about benefits of online learning for video, we're aware there's a range of things about it that we're very excited about, and people often state these repetitively in that they're learner-centered. There's access anytime, any place, on demand, in class, out of class, all sorts of things like that. We've got the opportunity for analytics, but we're not very good at that at the moment. We need software to help us with regards to that, to the way that we can see how students are working. On the multimedia domain, we're not very good at research in those domains with regards to how we optimize content presentation and how that really helps learners. But interestingly, I'm doing a paper, I'm collaborating with some lovely work that Nina Abdul has been doing, and we've been looking at some outcomes that they've been exploring with regards to teaching in their removal partial denture course. And she found some very interesting things, and we hope to be submitting that very, very soon. So you'll be able to read up on that later. One of the things I kind of disagree with is saying that videos are engaging and customized. I think videos aren't always engaging, and they can be quite boring. And so the notion of, if we're going to record one of our lectures, I'm afraid if you're not a very good lecturer and you'll create a boring lecture, the video is not going to enhance it in any way, apart from the fact that the students have got the option of not watching it, or they've got the option of speed listening to it, which actually is quite good. So you can see the usual things that we talk about with regards to the benefits of video for learning, and I don't think we can disagree with the majority of these. One of the things to talk about, though, are all videos the same? And there are actually different types, because Zach Wolfert has looked at this, and in paper he analysed, somebody looked at a range of video production styles, and he identified 18 different production styles that you can see listed there. And visually, he made a nice schematic to represent these. And you're probably quite familiar with some of these, and you may have experienced some of them, or maybe even have done some of these yourself. And really, what's interesting here is there a typology? Nobody's done that yet, and that's the next paper that I've been talking about writing. With regards to, is there a kind of classification? And I believe there is, but I've got a particular perspective. And when I look at these, I basically see there's monologue videos and there's dialogue videos. monologue videos tend to be presentation of content, and you're getting at the lower Bloom's taxonomy levels of just understanding of knowledge. Whereas I believe there's actually great power in dialogue, and dialogue raises the educational benefit up Bloom's taxonomy to different levels, and these really are more engaging. Now, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with monologue, but I don't do very many monologue presentations, and you'll see which ones I do later. So therefore, what we need to consider is the affordance of video, and what does it actually do for us? And in the same paper that Zach Wolfert had written in analysing the work of Hansch, they came up with these different interesting perspectives about the affordance that you can read and see here now. And out of these, there's probably two that are most pertinent to us in dentistry. And these are manipulating time and space. Yeah. Because one of the things...
Sorry, Prof. Can you share your screen, just your presentation? We haven't been able to...
Oh, dear. I thought I'd done that. Sorry, I presume you'd got it.
Yeah, all right, okay.
Okay, let me have a look what went wrong. Oh, dear, you should have pulled me up on that faster. Okay, well, let me quickly whiz you back through the... Can you see it now? I've clicked share. Okay. I did click it and I presumed it worked. Is that working now? Yes. Okay, that's working now. Is that correct? Is that working now? Can you answer me in the private chat? Yes, go to my PowerPoint. So it is sharing. Okay. Oh, that's very annoying. Okay, well, let me quickly just go back. I'll just highlight some of the points there. Okay, so those were the three main areas that we're going to talk about: the benefits, the task design, the innovation. These are the benefits of online video for learning: learner-centric access, multimedia, and the teacher benefit. And then we were looking at the typology of video that Zach Wolfert had created. And as I say, you can see some of the different ones here, but I actually feel that if we look at a classification of these, there's really two areas that we're looking at. One is monologue and the other is dialogue. And so therefore you can see the ones there that are dialogic in nature. And here we can see the affordance of video with regards to what they analyze could be achieved and what we can do in dentistry. And so therefore we've got the opportunity for being able to do close-ups, and we can speed these up and make things happen faster. And then of course we've got the opportunities for doing demonstrations. These are performance types videos, but again both of these are generally monologues. And so therefore, while they're stimulating for students to be taking on board the information, it's not getting them to higher levels of consideration. So we've talked about the classification, and we've talked about the idea of the affordances that video can achieve. And so therefore, you're probably thinking, I want to go about making a video. Let me just put that on the presentation format. There you go. And so therefore, I would say, well, why do you want to go about making a video? Because that's one of the fundamental things that you want to consider. Is it because you're wanting to do some e-learning, or you're wanting to create a MOOC? Is it because there's a particular solution-oriented problem you've discovered, and video is an interesting way of facilitating the answer to that problem? Or is it simply your head of department has told you you're going to do it? Either way, whichever one of these it happens to be, you need to think of your task design. And when you're doing that, there's basically two ways of doing task design. One is that you may forward engineer, or you can actually reverse engineer what you're going to do. Now, I'm going to spend a little bit of time looking at the forward engineering and the consideration. Here I've got a construct that I've created that is that I'll walk you through about how we look at these domains when you're designing video going forwards. So the first thing is you've got to consider your content. And sometimes this might be something that you want them to learn or do. It might be your particular perspective within your small domain or area. Or maybe there are some course level outcomes that you're wanting to achieve that need to be undertaken. Or maybe you're going at the high level. It's the program level outcomes at the BDS curriculum level that you're wanting to educate the students about. Or is it the university educational aims? But whatever those last three are, you've got written statements that you know that define the scope of what it is. And also, if it's your own thing, you've got a personal idea to help you with regards to what the content is and it's relevant to the students. Of course, sometimes it could simply be, heaven forbid, it's what students would like to learn. They might be requesting something like this, which would be absolutely fabulous for us to help them with. One of the other areas, the next area to consider is the purpose. What are you trying to achieve? And that's something I don't think we analyze enough. And here, I think we've got different levels that we should be considering. And invariably, the lowest level and the simplest one that you generally find in most instructional videos for how to do things or a recording of lectures is generally knowledge and understanding or concepts. So that's really quite low, but it can be important. But really what I think is more interesting is how do we design video to help students with higher order thinking skills with regards to analysis, decision-making, critical thinking, problem solving, or even synthesis. And that's something I think we need to put more of our energies into because that adds significantly more value. And of course, the other purpose might be, is it a performance skill? Is it a hard or soft skill that you're portraying? Is it a psychomotor skill that you're wanting to do with a instructional video? Or is it a soft skill such as communications or empathy? And of course, these are more challenging to design within the video when you're giving examples. But whatever we're doing with regards to the content and the purpose, I think the other arm and the penultimate leg is the value. And I think we have to let the students know why we're doing it and why it's important, because sometimes this needs to be spelled out to students to see that, because they must realize that there's really an actual or perceived benefit to this, because that then will help them in being motivated to undertake this. So therefore, you might be directing some videos to do with competencies or professional skills. They may be under your course level outcomes or to do with hard and soft skills. Another thing you can do is, if you want to increase the value of it, is you're saying, I'm no longer giving the lecture on such and such live. The only source of knowledge is going to be from the video. And you can't find textbooks on this because we've created this specially for you because I'm an expert and I've generated the knowledge, or it's something that's very specific and germane to our locality that you can't get information from elsewhere. So that's another way of ensuring you increase the value of what's going on. Another thing that I think we overlook is students transitioning. And they transition in different phases. They do the preclinical to clinical, and there's a gap. And they do it from the sim lab to the clinical, and there's a gap. And so this clinical gap is actually something that I've written on, and you can identify particular areas that students find challenging. And so therefore, we've got to work out, is there a way that we can use video to help them translate the theory they've learnt in the preclinical or in the sim lab, and how they're able to apply that clinically, because there is a gap and students struggle with that. And that's where they end up with uncertainties and ambiguities and questions. And that actually was one of the causes of and we'll share that with you in a moment. Of course, there might be issues to do with It might be exam driven. Students will realize that this is going to be something that's coming up on the exam. There's nothing wrong with that. I am creating a OSCE station, and I've told the students that the content will come from these 15 videos. And I'm sure they're going to watch those 15 videos. And I have no problems with that, because they'll watch the videos and they'll learn from the videos. And of course, the other obvious thing about the value with videos is it's asynchronous, on demand, and students have the opportunity to watch it when they want, rather than when we're normally dictating that they turn up for the lecture. So basically, if you get the content correct, you've got the good purpose, and there's a real perceived or actual benefit to the value, it will drive consumption. But one of the things we can see here is we've got the what and the why, and really we have to consider the pedagogy. Now, so far, this could be anything. This design structure could be for course content for a course, a module, a lecture, or in our case, we're thinking of video. So how do we go about using this framework for creating suitable videos? And what I'm saying here is that if we combine all these elements together, if I video, will they watch? I think the answer will be, by and large, the vast majority will. But you won't necessarily get everyone watching. Now, some people will say, well, that's dreadful. How can we do that? Well, how can we allow that to happen? Because the analytics will show us which students have and haven't watched. Well, that gives us the opportunity to somehow nudge them into engaging with the video more. And you've got to remember, when students come into a lecture, you've got no idea if they're really cognitively engaged with you in the class. We presume they are, but invariably they're not. And so therefore, I think that what happens with video is we were able to see something that in the classroom we're generally not able to see. I've got some resources on that document that looks into various aspects about how you might be able to create some video and the content if you're wanting to look at creating instructional videos. There is some information on there that you can have a look at in those documents, in that document that I've given. One of the questions that comes up is, how long should a video be? And there's a reasonable amount of evidence on this, but I don't think it's particularly good. You've got a company like Panopto, who obviously is selling a video platform and a recording system, and they're saying nearly all experts firmly believe, which probably means they've never really asked anybody, but they just decided to say that training videos should be as long as they need in order to meet the learning objective. I can't disagree with that. But it's how you go about defining as long as they need to be, and of course, whether they need to be chunked, and whether that really makes any difference. So let's say you've got a procedure that takes 20 minutes to demonstrate. You've got a video that's 20 minutes long, or do you make 4 videos, 5 minutes long? Either way, it's still 20 minutes. So I'm not entirely sure how chunking videos really makes it any beneficial, but we're led to believe that students disengage with videos that get long. This happens to be perhaps one of the most cited studies that looked into it, and these guys looked at a huge number of MOOC courses, and they did an analysis of the videos, and they looked at how much students ended up watching. And they said that after 6 minutes, engagement drops rapidly. The trouble is, if you actually look at the data they present, it's not after 6 minutes, it's actually after 9 minutes. So it's between 6 and 9 minutes that it drops off. So I think they've shortchanged us there in the way that they've presented their data. And they came up with some interesting findings, and you can have a look at some of these, but you've got to remember that these are all based on a MOOC. Now, the vast majority of MOOCs are not course requirements. They're things you want to do because you're interested. And so very often, and I'm guilty of this, I've probably signed up for 5 or 6 or 7 MOOCs, and I've only ever really done one, and I started it and I didn't finish it, unfortunately, because I wasn't so motivated. I had the interest, but it didn't really have the value or the purpose for me, although the content was there, to stimulate me to finish it. So what they're doing here is they're actually taking a relatively, in my opinion, a relatively low motivated group of students or learners who are looking at MOOCs, and they've come up with this data of 6 minutes. So therefore, I think we can cast a little bit of a shadow on that with our students in the course that we're designing, we would probably have different results and findings. So that's just a summary of how long they should be. Somebody said, okay, video shouldn't be more than 15 minutes. And of course, if you look at the optimal TED Talk, well, that's 18 minutes. I have no problems listening to an 18-minute TED Talk. It's entertaining and it has value and it's got interesting content. So that completely breaks the the previous studies saying that they should be 6 minutes or 15 minutes or whatever. So it really depends on what you're doing. So I don't think the question should be how long should videos be. I think it should actually be how good videos should be. And so therefore you've got to really think about what you're putting into it and what your goal of the content, the purpose, and the value is going to be for the learner. Of course, in video, there's a lot of information about issues to do with multimedia design and the evidence base for that. You can have a look in the document that I'm going to send you that has the URLs. There's particular, let's see, it's the book by Mayer, who is one of the kind of like grandfathers of this kind of thing, and looking at the dual processing and reducing cognitive load and things like that. But I don't really think video is that distracting that we're going to lose a lot of content. But I think if you design it well, you can enhance the learning experience. And that's certainly what we found with Nina's study in what she was doing. Another thing that we need to consider with videos that does have an evidence base is the use of interpolated questions within it. And in fact, what they do is it actually, and these are like introducing MCQ questions within there. And what we find is it reduces mind wandering and it improves the learning experience of online lectures. So that's something else to consider. I haven't done that yet, but maybe I will one day. But I do something else, and I'll share that with you in a moment. So basically, we know that there's an awful lot of videos out there, and there's a lot of videos that our students are watching. And on YouTube, they go out and they'll search and they'll find stuff. And when I made this presentation a few years ago, when I looked for dental clinical videos, I found 270,000. And then something like 18 months later, that's now been upgraded to almost 1 million. So the numbers out there are huge. And one of the problems with all these videos, although they're very entertaining and our students like watching them, one of the issues that my colleague and friend, Xiaoli Gao, who's now in NUS, discovered when she was analyzing a group of healthcare students at Hong Kong U, that one of the main things they're concerned about is students believe there's variable quality. They're probably not good at defining what is good quality and what is bad quality. The videos are not from here, not from our institution. And so therefore they don't know, well, how does that really apply here? And these videos are not discussed. So there's a lot out there that could be done to improve how we guide students into using these videos. So then, with regard to the videos for learning, we've got the idea of, well, should we be making our own videos? And the answer is, it depends. It depends what is already out there and what you need to do. So, for example, I have no problems at all with taking somebody else's video, allowing students to watch it. And if it's absolutely perfect, that's great. If there are aspects of it I slightly disagree with, then I would add a little rider saying, I agree with 60%, but at 3 minutes 40, they say this, and we don't have that particular approach. And at 5 minutes 23, I also don't like the way that they do this, we do it another way. So that then gives the students the affirmation that we've endorsed the video and we've critiqued it with regards to things that have contextualized it to it being from our own place. Then they'll have greater trust in the content. But invariably, you are going to be thinking about making a video. One of my the first videos I made, this was the second batch I did. I probably made the first one in the early 2000s, I'm guessing, had to do with fixed prosthodontics and tooth preparation. So these were purely instructional monologue videos on how to do. You can see the affordance of close-up, being able to demonstrate the use of the burrs. You can see the perspective of how you go about cutting it, the tooth prep, and it was edited down, so therefore we constrain time when we were watching that. And invariably what I started doing when I played the video back was I played at a faster speed as well, which of course our students generally do most of the time. And so therefore it allows you to go through a whole procedure in a relatively short period of time. So those were my first ones that I made, but they're monologue, and I've got to say they're not particularly exciting. Students do watch them. They probably don't re-watch them very much. And one of the problems I found was I thought, wow, I've just made this amazing video. Why am I getting the students to watch the video in the class? They could be watching it outside of the class. They watch the video there, they come into the class, and then we start. We save ourselves time. That would be very efficient. So I did that for one of the first sessions when I think I made that particular video, and I told them to watch it. They had the link and they came in and they were starting the session. And when I was watching them, I noticed that some of them really didn't quite know what they were doing. And they were kind of like going around asking, what happens, what are we doing, what are you? But the vast majority of them did. And so what I did was I went to our Moodle system and I logged on and I had a look. And I could see how many students had not watched the video, even though I was very explicit and guiding before. And so about 30% of the students had not watched the video. So I said, ladies and gentlemen, I know who you are. You haven't watched the video. I was a bit miffed, I have to say. I want you to go watch the video. You need to watch that, otherwise you don't know what's going on. So I'll give you an amnesty. I won't get cross and I won't do anything like that. I want you to go and watch the video. But I was very naughty. I made them go the furthest part in the building possible, down into the PBL suites, to go watch the video down there on some laptops. And then they came back and carried on. So that made me learn, don't do it again. If there's video content that is absolutely required for that session, how to do CPR, how to take blood pressure, how to do a crown prep, you've got to make sure that everybody watches it, because students have conflicts with their time, they have different priorities, and so therefore you've got to make them watch the video. But when you do that and you go around, and invariably my class is in the afternoon after lunch, you can see a number of the students are falling asleep. That happens. I used to do it. I was guilty of that. And so much so, my orthodontic seminars in the afternoon, my teacher very sweetly used to lean over and just nudge my shoulder to wake me up, which is really, so I'm very empathetic to students falling asleep. So therefore, I've got to make sure that they don't fall asleep. So I have to move around the classroom and talk a little bit loudly when I get to them so that they wake up. But one of the other things that I've noticed when they're watching the video in class is the reason why they're falling asleep is because their attention span is drifting off. When you're watching a video that's a monologue, that's instructional, you're generally a passive learner. You're not really cognitively engaged. So in the same way that we saw before with regards to the interpolating question, make students more engaged, you actually have to give the students a focus for the learning, and you need to give them a question-based worksheet to guide them to content and make them task-oriented such that they are cognitively engaged, and you're signaling to them what are the key things in the video that they should be particularly paying attention to. So that's how I now let my students watch the instructional videos on tooth preparation, and I believe it does make them more cognitively engaged, and it's quite a bit more difficult for them to fall asleep. Not impossible, but quite a bit. So what we've been talking about now has been basically forward engineering. So that's the idea of content, purpose, value, pedagogy. And that's how you go about starting your task design for when you're creating video. But I came across an accidental innovation, and this was actually reverse engineering. And what this was in relation to, and it was what I was talking earlier about transition and translation for students going from preclinical to clinical, or going from SimLab to the clinics, is that students have questions relating to a transition issue. And so therefore, we've taught them the theory in the SimLab, but when they have that patient case on the clinic, they're suddenly going, well, I know you taught me this in the SimLab with this scenario, but this patient's got a different scenario, this tooth, this pocket, this radiograph, this whatever. I don't know how that translates. I've got a gap in my knowledge. And so what would happen is students would come to my office and they'd want a consultation. I'd say, sure, come in, let's have a chat about it. We'd engage in a Socratic discussion. And I don't know if you're familiar with Socratic discussions, but basically, for me, it's the only way that I cognitively engage with students is I'm wanting to ask them questions to lead them to their own answer. I don't just want to give them my opinion. I want to challenge them mentally. So then what would happen, I'd ask the questions, the student would get to the answer. After that, the student would leave, hopefully slightly wiser and perhaps happier. But the problem with that was the rest of the class were not there to learn from that one-on-one consultation, talking about something that is a similar issue that they all have problems with. And so therefore, I decided to record these consultations. And so therefore, you see the student has a problem. They don't know how it applies to their particular clinical case. They come to my office with their study models and articulator, and sometimes they'd be on their own or they'd be in small groups. And I said, can I record this? They said yes. And so then what I did was I used my phone to focus on my coffee table and focus zooming on the materials, not the student. And we'd record their question, my questions leading them to the answer and the solution. And so therefore, we uploaded them onto a video playing platform, and students would then have the opportunity to access these out of the class to help them with their learning. And so therefore, these initial ones were what I called the communal consultation video, because it was a one-on-one student teaching consultation that was then shareable with the rest of the class. And I created a number of these to do with treatment planning for resin bonded bridges. Later, once I analysed these, as I said before, I called them the observation and videoed expert student dialogue, and this had to do with treatment planning. And basically, the students felt that it broadened their experience, it gave them clinical confidence, it helped them in their transition to clinical care on patients that they're treating. They used it for revision. It was cognitively active, and it stimulated their higher order thinking, because what was happening is when I asked the question in the video, the student at home watching it is thinking of their own answer. So therefore, they're situating themselves as if they're in the video and they're in that moment of the consultation. And so therefore, that was really quite surprising and interesting. So I've written that up a couple of times as the CCV. And with some of the analysis that I've been doing recently, I've identified a framework as to what's happening with this dialogic video and what are the key elements. And basically, it's a student-centered problem. So there's value to that because other students have similar problems. They're going to be asking same questions about the treatment planning. We then go through the dialogue with the expert. I ask the questions, and I might occasionally give the answer. And we've got the case materials and the student answers that has the purpose and the value. And during this one-on-one questioning, we end up with a series of questions that means we get a guided problem-solving pathway. So we've got a beginning, middle, and end, because ultimately we get to an answer or model answer, or solution rather, and that is expert guided. And so altogether, we've got this nugget of information that has content, purpose, and value, and the students will consume. And that's just highlighting some of the key elements of the OVED videos that we undertake. Once I'd done that video, I thought, well, that was really quite good. What else can I do? What else can I help students with? Well, I do the flipped classroom in the SimLab. I don't do any lectures. I have worksheets that I give students. I call these synthetic clinical experience worksheets. The students get them the week before. They work on them at home. They bring them into the classroom. And then I walk around the class doing a Socratic discourse with them, eliciting their answers. So we get them to judge features of quality in tooth preparations and a whole range of different other clinical things and clinical cases and scenarios. They form groups. This had to be rather a large group. I wouldn't recommend that. But you see, sometimes students appear to enjoy my teaching, which is rather good. Well, actually, no, they don't enjoy my teaching. They enjoy their interaction. And that's what makes this very interesting, because it's the student social engagement that makes it stimulating. That's why now we've got the challenge with all this online learning, is that we're lacking the social engagement. So the face-to-face in learning is very, very important. So the students do their preparation, they discuss their worksheets together, and then once they've done that and I've realized they've finished it, I then wander around the class and I ask them questions. So what I actually did was I started to record these, because I thought, well, when students go back to their notes before exams months later, they're going to look at their notes and they're going to say, I don't understood what I wrote at the time, I've forgotten it. So what I've done here is I've video recorded these and I've made them available online for students to go back to if they want, so that they can relive their that teaching moment that they had, or it may have been a previous class. And you can see these videos are actually quite long. These can be 40 to 50 minutes long, maybe even a bit longer, because that's how long it takes to do the debriefing. And what I do is I create hot links such that students cannot access the particular question. So if it was question 8 that they had a particular problem with, I will be able to facilitate their ease of access to that moment so they can listen to the dialogue and the explanation, and that will help them with their level of understanding. And so therefore that facilitates access to the piece of information. I think if you didn't have that, they'd probably fewer students would engage with it. So I think that's an important part of your video task design. So I uploaded that and students still watch that. Now they're using it in a different way. I don't have time to talk about that now, but there's a paper I've submitted recently to the European Journal of Dental Education, and that should be coming out soon. And so that's interesting. But one of the other things I wanted to do is I realized students had a big stressful exam. We do competence tests, and our students have to do a resin-bonded bridge preparation. And they have worries and stresses about performing this clinical competence test because it's summative. If they fail it enough times, they may be held back. So it is a high-stakes examination. And one of the many issues with that, apart from the stress, is they don't necessarily understand the case selection criteria, and they don't understand the assessment standards. And so what I did was I videoed some authentic dialogic exchanges when students were undertaking their competence test. So this is a student doing their case presentation for the competence test. And so this is when I will ask them, what are you doing today? Why are you going to do this? How are you going to do this? And we record this with their permission, and then we upload it for other students to look at, to help them during their preparation. The student then goes away and does their clinical procedure. I don't evaluate that because I can't sit on their shoulder all the time. And then afterwards, they go through a self-evaluation. And so here we see a snapstone model that student has pulled up from their alginate of their tooth preparation. And we do an evaluation and we ask them, how did it go? What went well? Have you met the standard? And invariably, the students take these very seriously, prepare very well, and the vast majority of them pass it. But it's a very valued learning experience. And these videos have high consumption rates, as you can see across the year. You can see the CT is the competence test. And you can see immediately before that the consumption of these videos shoots high up across the year. So the students are consuming them, and it helps them in their performance. It reduces their stress. So coming into perhaps my last slide, I think we've covered a range of things. I think if I video, will they watch? I think the answer is yes. If we're thoughtful about our task design with regards to our forward engineering, or maybe we've found something specific that we wish to reverse engineer that students find value in, and they will consume it, because we know students are increasingly huge consumers of video, and we need to work out how we tap into this by creating useful things. And as I said, we need to look with regards to our forward design and our reverse design issues. And so therefore, we need to check what it is we're doing and evaluate it over time. So therefore, with these videos, I've explored these and analyzed them and worked out what I need to consider with regards to the content, value, and pedagogy for the reverse design of those dialogic videos. If you're going to use the expert-student dialogue, you realize that it will get us up to higher order thinking skills. And so therefore, these are very useful for treatment planning, flipped class, small group seminars, or competence assessments. And the students have watched these. And in fact, the flipped classroom ones, what they're actually doing now, and this is the paper I just recently submitted, they're now actually watching the previous year's flipped class video when they're doing their homework for when they come into the classroom. So they're using it in a completely different way that I hadn't anticipated. So that's very exciting. And they are, the vast majority of them have been watching it, which is great, because all I want them to do is master the content. I think we can use longer videos, and we should be able to facilitate access to key moments in the videos. Maybe if we are clever and we will have automatic subtitles, we may be able to make these searchable such that you can find the moments when these key things happen. And ideally, and this is more challenging, but it's something I've got to see whether we can do, is when we create these videos that we're able to give them keyword tags and make them searchable. So students will be able to say, I want to learn up jaw records for partial dentures, and they'll find all those videos and they can watch those before they're going onto the clinics with their patients. So thank you very much for your time. I can see we're about 50 minutes, so slightly longer than I thought we were going to be. So I hope you found that useful. Please do let me know if you have any questions or if you have any interest in collaboration, because I've looked at the current literature on videos in dentistry, and at the moment there's a lot of gaps and errors in the methodology that people are undertaking. And we need to say, as I've mentioned before, the idea of how we go about aligning the video content to the learning objectives and as well as the assessment. And that's something I think will be the next challenges that we need to undertake. Great, so let me stop sharing. Sorry about that hiccup at the beginning. I did actually click the share button, but didn't realize that it didn't go on. That's good. Can you hear me now, Ajay, for us?
Yes, Professor, thank you so much.
Fantastic.
It's a very fascinating presentation, and I think it's one of those stepping stones for all of us to use in our own organizations, in our own dental schools. Something I would like to ask you upfront is, how has been your experience with the transition of use of multimedia? Because Professor is coming a long way since Professor graduated and now in the era of multimedia. So there has been a transition. So how has it been for you, and how are the students taking these transitions? Because I think 7 years ago we never had multimedia so much as we have it today. So how's your experience with yourself and with the students?
Yeah, I would say, unfortunately, we haven't been very good. I think we've actually been quite bad and slow because video's been around a long time. But that's not surprising because we know how long it takes us to adopt changes, even though there's a great evidence-based literature supporting it. And if you look at the scientific literature, they suggest it takes about 17 years. And so I still think we're in that window of 17 years, even though we know video can be useful. You're getting the early adopters and some of the early pioneers taking this on. The students, and so therefore they're being the champions of it, but other people don't know how to do it, or they're uncomfortable, they haven't had training. So therefore we do need to work out how we facilitate that as an organization to develop our staff's expertise. And generally at the university level, we do that. In our faculty, we're not very good at that, unfortunately. Some people, I did an analysis of that recently, and that's just because people's construct and headspace is in the old curriculum, the old way of doing things. Whereas now, maybe, I think one of the few upsides of the recent pandemic and the way that it's rattled our educational pedagogy and the way that we look at things, it is going to mean people are going to look at things differently in how they do them. And, you know, people have been obviously, you know, using Zoom and this, that, and the other. And so therefore, I think that will stimulate a change, but there needs to be support. People need to be thoughtful about what it is they're going to do. They've got to think about it from the student's perspective, and they've got to work out how they have a framework that they're looking at the content, the purpose and the value, and how that fits into the learning objectives and how that fits into the assessment. So that's why I've designed an assessment based on content in videos that they can't find anywhere else. So I'm really looking forwards to the analytics to see what's going to happen on that and how they're going to perform.
Hey, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Dr. Ajay would want.
Yeah, I think I just would like to comment on your point here, that I think it's also taken us time in terms of technology becoming affordable and becoming mobile, because I think making videos would have been a cumbersome process many years ago, but today it's much easier because everybody has a handphone with which you can shoot videos. So I think I'm sure you've seen through that experience as well, Prof.
Yeah, I mean, you can go fancy, but I think fancy isn't good. So I've only done one where I had a cameraman who had some lighting and I wore a microphone. Whereas now, all my videos, I do holding that. And sometimes I have a microphone plugged in, or I've got a Bluetooth one that I can use, or I get the student to hold it if I'm doing it. So one of the things I've started doing is, and I didn't share this one with you because I haven't started analyzing it, is I've started doing clinical problem-solving sessions. And that's when I'm on the clinic and the student says, my lower denture's loose, what do I do? And so I'll come over and I'll go through that Socratic questioning, or sometimes I'll just say, right, here's the problem. Do you know what to do? No. Okay, this is what we do. So I have the student, I get the patient, the student, and me to sign consent. And then I get the student to video record how we go about solving a particular clinical problem. Because the vast majority of our education and demonstrations is how do you do it perfectly. But when students get onto the clinic, it's not the perfect world. They don't know how to problem solve. And so therefore they get stuck. And so now my expectation is, when I'm supervising students, if you're doing a lower denture, I expect you to watch my videos on problem solving for lower dentures. And if they say, oh, I've got no post-am, I say, go watch the post-am video before you come onto the clinic. They watch the post-am video and then they go and add green stick onto the posterior border, add it on, and they've learned how to do it without me having to show them how to do it. So that makes them more independent. It probably increases their autonomy. It reduces my time, and it means I can be discussing things with other students in a different way. So therefore, I've been creating a range of videos about that to help students, but I've got to work out how to integrate that a bit more.
Thank you so much, Professor. I think at PIDC also we have conducted a small study on just-in-time videos as a student research, and we have come out with positive findings. So thank
great.
you. So we'll take a question from one of our viewers, Supurti Ravi. Supurti Ravi asked a question regarding the analytics, if there are to be considered. If the videos are uploaded onto the public platform, how can we obtain institution-specific analytics? Professor can see the question there.
Yeah, well, if I now don't use a public platform. Initially, I used to use YouTube because it was ubiquitous and easy to do. And if I put it on YouTube, I would make it unlisted, so nobody can search for it and watch it. And it's still probably not the best way of doing it, but their analytics are better, but I would invariably not do it. And all we could find is the way the students accessed the video was they logged on to our Moodle, clicked onto the link, and then they'd be able to watch that video. So we'd have a record of the click, but we wouldn't know how much of the video that they've done. So therefore, I have now created my own video playing platform that has a contemporaneous discussion board such that students can type questions at particular time moments, and the question will be linked to that moment in the video, and it also sends an email off to the staff member, and the staff member can sign back in. But the analytics on that will be much greater. That will allow us to see how much of the video the students are actually watching. And then the next level of things I would maybe consider is whether to embed some questions into there. But they tend not to be quite so. All they really help you with is that the student has understood the content and watched the video. But there's nothing wrong with that.
Dr. Ajay would like to...
I think I agree with what Prof has just said. I think there is a follow-up question also, I think, by Dr. Spurti. So I think you should take that also.
Yeah. So the
can you just clarify the question on how important is it to clinicians, the technical aspects? I'm not sure on that. But the other one is, should we depend on technical experts? Well, I do all my own videoing, and when I video on the clinic, I take a photograph of the consent form, I email it to our IT officer, I do a sharing act for the IT officer to be able to upload the video, and so I like to have that all done before I've left the clinic. And so therefore, and then she uploads it and I give her the title and the keywords and whatever. And so she uploads that. A lot of staff can't do that because you've got to be quite organized and motivated to do it and whatever. And so not everyone's like that. So then you've got to work out what's the other way of doing it. Well, yeah, you might need some backup. So you might need a student who's helping, or you might need a nurse who's helping or something like that. Or you've got an IT person to help out. And so you do need a little bit of help to understand how to do the uploading. So I do think you need some kind of technical support at the back end for getting the video in the right place with the link and everything that you need.
Okay. Thank you so much, Professor. One question from my side. How do you adjust the student learning time with the videos into the curriculum? I mean, are they part of the student learning time? Or they are not part of the student learning time? How is it?
Yeah, no, they're not part of all my Dialogic videos are for students' own consumption. I have no expectation of their consumption. I ask them to engage with it. I should really have some requirements, but I'm not there yet. The trouble with having requirements is students will just game the system. And so therefore, you've got to work out how to nudge them into consuming it. So you've either got to increase the value, if you've got the content and the purpose, and you've got to make some of the video examinable. And so therefore you need to have, so therefore you can have photographs of case presentations or treatment planning or something like that to be able to motivate the students to watch the content. But invariably, the vast majority of them are watching it. And I think when you get to a critical point that you get, it grows over time. So it starts slow and the consumption does grow. That's what I've noticed. And the students start thinking, ooh, I better be watching that because my friends are watching it. So I don't want to miss out.
Yes, yes.
So that might be another angle that I need to say. And maybe, yeah. But yeah, so we've got to work out how to nudge them into consuming them.
Thank you so much, Professor. I think...
yeah, maybe I would like to ask one particular point as well, Prof, here that looking forward with the fourth industrial revolution kicking in and virtual reality coming in, where do you see virtual reality and traditional video making in the future for teaching and learning? Yeah,
well, video is easy, straightforward, and what you can achieve in 2D, I think, is quite good. And so therefore, I've scratched my head about virtual reality and how that helps. And I'm still not sure we're there yet. And there's various issues for that. One is some people can't wear the device very long and they get disoriented if it happens to be one of those headgear things. But I think it does have a place for maybe some of the soft skills or the orientation to environments, or maybe for large psychomotor skills performances, or how you might manage an emergency situation in a hospital, or for triage in an ICU or an emergency clinic or something like that. So again, I think it'll have particular niche things. And I'm trying to think how we'll be able to do it in particular in dentistry, and maybe the technology gets so good. I mean, we've already got the Moog simulators that is kind of an image generated thing. So I think it's got some definite uses, but I think it's going to take us 17 years before we really work out in what area and if we can afford it. And so I think video is a much faster, simpler way of achieving a lot of these things. Yeah, but people will undoubtedly spend significant amounts of money on something that only gives them small returns.
True.
That's what happens with new technology.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. So I think if it is going to take 17 years, the time is now to start. And
absolutely.
I think from professor's video, I think I'm motivated now to at least start with the student social engagement videos, because those would be one of the smaller ones, very focused. And I think I'm going to start on that note the first
Absolutely,
thing.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, you've got all sorts of things to do about, treatment planning. And if you are, I know it's difficult. Some places aren't allowed to video in public hospitals and things like that, but you could quite easily do a video recording of a patient encounter and either have students self-reflect on that or use that to annotate what went well, what didn't go well. And then, of course, you'll be able to get software that allows you to blur out the faces, but you would still probably need to get consent for that. So that's one thing that's quite important.
Thank you so much, Professor. I think that is all from the question and answer session. Back to you, Dr. Ajay.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah. Yes, Dr. Ajay.
Yeah, all right. So thank you, Prof. Vitello, for your time. I think just to summarize, I think the most important takeaways from your session are basically task creation, which could be forward engineered or reverse engineered, and content, purpose, and pedagogy and value. If they are taken into note, it does not matter how long the video is, as long as it is engaging. I think if I'm able to summarize that right, maybe that's a very important message. And I think it's very timely from the feedback that we've seen, that we've got from all our viewers. At this point during the pandemic, I think many of us have relied on video learning and engaging with our students and learners, as well as engaging with a lot of free webinars that are going on. I think there's a lot more that can be done, and your time and your knowledge that you've shared with us will help all of us collectively improve. So thank you so much. I'll pass it back to Dr. Larry now.
Yes, thank you once again, and thank you for joining us today. We thank all our viewers, especially thank our speaker for today, Professor Michael, Dr. Ajay, and Dr. Fawaz for the wonderful session. And I must say that I am currently in a collaboration with Professor Michael regarding one of the videos. Yes, I'm happy about that. And I'm glad to tell everyone that Professor shared his email and he's open to collaboration and open to more questions and comments. We'll be posting his PDF document and the links that he shared soon on our Facebook page. So that's it from us now. Until we meet next time, best wishes to everyone from PIDC. Take care and stay safe.
Yes, stay safe, everyone. Keep well.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much, everyone.